Picture this. You're standing in line at a grocery store. You've got a normal basket, milk, eggs, maybe some fruit. But as you get closer to the cashier, you're not thinking about what you're going to cook for dinner. You're doing this frantic, silent math in your head. You're wondering if that $45 charge from 3 days ago has cleared your bank yet. You're staring at the total on the screen, and for a split second, your heart actually skips a beat because you aren't 100% sure the card is going to beep approved. Maybe you've been there. You tell yourself it's just a tight month, but deep down, you know it's every month. You're living in a state of constant, low-level panic, waiting for the one unexpected expense that finally pushes you over the edge. Look, I know that feeling. I've lived that feeling. But what if I told you that there is a specific mathematical kill switch for that anxiety? And no, it's not $1 million. It's not even 100,000. It's much closer than you think. My name is Tony, and I spend way too much time thinking about why your first $10,000 are more important than $1 million. If you're someone who feels like you're running a race on a treadmill, working harder, taking extra shifts, but never actually seeing your bank balance grow, you need to hear this. Most of the financial advice you see on social media is honestly, it's trash. People are out here teaching you how to invest in crypto or pick stocks when you don't even have $1,000 in the bank. They're teaching you how to run before you can even crawl. In this video, we're going to break down the actual psychology and the brutal math of why $10,000 is the most important milestone of your entire life. It is the literal immunity threshold. And look, make sure you stick around until the very end, because I'm going to share something called the 3-year redirection strategy. It's the single most effective way to hit this goal, even if you feel like you have $0 left at the end of the month. You're going to want that one. So if you're ready to stop playing defense with your life, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel, and it tells me you're ready to get serious. Here's the thing that drives me crazy. Everyone in the personal finance world is obsessed with the $1 million goal. How to become a millionaire. The millionaire mindset. Look, I get it. It's a big, sexy number. But for the average person, $1 million feels like a fairy tale. It's so far away that your brain it shuts down. It doesn't feel real, so you don't take real action. But here is what most people don't realize. The jump from 0 to 10,000 is infinitely harder and more life-changing than the jump from 100,000 to 200,000. Why? Because $10,000 is where you break the laws of financial physics. Right now, you're probably operating under the assumption that more income is the only solution to your stress. You think, if I just made $10,000 more a year, I'd be fine. But look at the stats. A recent study by Bankrate found that 56% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency with their savings. That isn't just people on minimum wage. That includes people making 6 figures. So the problem isn't just your paycheck. The problem is your threshold. Until you hit 10,000, you are financially naked. Every time the wind blows, a flat tire, a dental bill, a slow week at work, you catch a cold. You aren't building wealth, you're just repairing leaks. Let's talk about what's happening inside your head. This is where it gets really interesting. There's this thing called scarcity mindset. When you have no savings, your brain is literally bathed in cortisol. That's the stress hormone. Harvard researchers found that living under chronic financial strain can actually drop your effective IQ by up to 13 points. Think about that for a second. You are literally making dumber decisions because you are worried about money. You're more likely to take out a high-interest payday loan. You're more likely to stay in a dead-end job you hate. And you're more likely to buy stuff you don't need just to get a temporary hit of dopamine to forget your problems. It's a biological trap. But when you hit $10,000, something in your neurochemistry clicks. Your brain stops scanning for threats and starts scanning for opportunities. This is what we call the emergency fund effect. It's not just about the money being in the bank, it's about the mental bandwidth it frees up. When you have $10,000 saved, a $500 car repair isn't a catastrophe. It's just an inconvenience. If you have 0 savings, you're thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pay for this? Should I put it on the credit card? Can I borrow from my mom? That's a massive cortisol spike. But with 10,000, you think, ugh, that's annoying. I'll just transfer the money from my savings. Done. No spike, no IQ drop, no panic. That shift from panic to mild annoyance is exactly where your new life begins. Now look, maybe you're thinking, Tony, $10,000? That sounds like a mountain I can't climb. I can barely save $50 a month. I hear you, I really do. But let's look at the concrete math. Why did I pick 10,000? If you look at the average cost of life-derailing emergencies, they almost always fall between $1,000 and $5,000. A major transmission failure on your car, about $3,500. An emergency room visit with a high deductible, maybe $2,000. A last-minute flight for a family emergency, $1,200. If you have $10,000, you are effectively immune to almost everything that keeps people stuck in the poverty trap. You have a shield. And here's the part nobody tells you. When you have that money, you start saving more money automatically. How? Because you stop paying the broke tax. You stop paying late fees on bills. You stop paying 29% interest on credit cards because you can pay them off. You can afford to buy things in bulk when they're on sale. You can afford to pay your car insurance annually instead of monthly, which usually saves you about 10%. Being broke is expensive. Having $10,000 is the only way to stop paying the tax for being poor. It's a snowball effect. The first $10,000 is the hardest because you're fighting the friction of your old life. But once you're there, the math starts working for you instead of against you. Let me tell you a story. I have a friend. We'll call him Mark. Mark worked a job he absolutely hated. His boss was a nightmare, and the work was soul-crushing. But Mark couldn't quit. Why? Because Mark had $400 in his bank account. He was a prisoner. He had to say yes to every extra shift, every insult, and every unreasonable demand because he was terrified of being evicted. Then Mark got serious. He cut his expenses, he worked a side hustle on the weekends, and he finally hit $10,000. 2 weeks later, his boss tried to pull the same old garbage, demanding he work through a holiday weekend without extra pay. For the first time in 3 years, Mark didn't say, "Okay, I'll be there." He said, "No, I'm not doing that. That wasn't our agreement." And you know what? He didn't get fired. But even if he had, he would have been fined for months. That confidence, that FEU money on a small scale, completely changed the power dynamic. This is what $10,000 gives you, negotiating power. You walk into job interviews differently. You negotiate your salary from a place of, "I want this," instead of, "I'm desperate for this." Desperation has a smell, believe me, and employers can smell it a mile away. When you don't need the job to survive until next Friday, you magically start getting better offers. Now look, I know what some of you are thinking. Tony, I live in an expensive city. 10,000 won't last me a month. Look, if you live in New York, London, or San Francisco, maybe your immunity number needs to be 15 or 20,000. But the principle is exactly the same. The milestone is having enough to stop fearing your own mailbox. And if you think you can't save it, here is a reality check that might hurt a little. The average American spends over $3,000 a year on convenience. We're talking about dining out, premium coffee, and subscriptions they don't even use. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy your life. I'm saying you need to realize that you are trading your freedom for convenience. Every time you spend $20 on a meal you could have made for $5, you are telling yourself that a temporary taste in your mouth is more important than never being stressed about your car breaking down again. Is that generic cereal really that bad? Does it really taste like cardboard? Or are you just addicted to the brand? You have to be honest with yourself. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you don't have a brand preference. You have a survival problem. All right, as I promised at the beginning, let's get tactical. How do you actually get there? We call this the 3-year redirection. If you can redirect just 1/3 of that convenience spending I just mentioned toward your savings, most people can hit $10,000 in less than 3 years. Here is your 3-step plan. Step 1, the identity shift. Stop saying I'm trying to save. That's weak language. Start saying I am a person who is building a $10,000 shield. Act like that person. That person doesn't buy things just because they're on sale. That person values their peace of mind more than a new gadget. Step 2, automated scarcity. This is huge. Set up an automatic transfer to a high-yield savings account the very minute your paycheck hits. If you don't see the money, you won't spend it. Treat that transfer like a mandatory bill you owe to your future self. Step 3, the optimization loop. Once you hit your first $1,000, do not celebrate by spending it. Celebrate by finding one recurring bill to cut, maybe a streaming service or a gym membership you don't use. Use that extra money to accelerate the next 1,000. Look, the first 1,000 is brutal. It's all willpower. But the second 1,000 is easier. By the time you're at 5,000 or 6,000, the momentum is so strong it feels almost automatic. You start to crave the feeling of that balance growing more than you crave the feeling of buying something new. Here is the final truth. The person you become while saving your first $10,000 is infinitely more valuable than the money itself. You are proving to yourself that you are in control. You're proving that you can delay gratification. You're proving that you are no longer a victim of the system. $10,000 isn't just a number. It's a complete psychological transformation. It is the difference between being a pawn in the economy and being a player. So what's it going to be? Are you going to spend another year staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering, what if? Or are you going to start building your shield today? If you're ready to hit that $10,000 mark, I want you to type, "I'm starting today" in the comments. I want to see who is actually serious about changing their life. My name is Tony. Stop playing defense. Start building. I'll see you in the next one.